Welcome to the Nehemiah Entrepreneurship Community Podcast. I'm your host, Patrice Tsague. We here in our last podcast, at least last one with Susan Schramm. Susan, again, we're almost done. Susan, thank you so much for just being faithful and being an exceptional professional.
Well, thank you very much. I have really had fun with this program. This has been a delight to be in sort of being able to be the armchair to get to see the whole thing, the front office and the back office. You guys have been doing a really professional job.
And you actually really helped us shape this from the beginning since last year. So as we conclude today, Susan, before, well, I'll save that one for last, but let's start with this morning. Pastor Moore led us with, he called it Living with Limited Resources. That was just such a profound topic. What was your key takeaway there?
You know, it's interesting because I think, again, he's quite convicting in the sense that we as entrepreneurs sometimes start with this sense of, but we don't have enough. And the message was, yes, you do. Even in your scarcity, you have enough to move forward if you're aligned with listening to God first. And I think sometimes, here we are tomorrow going to be talking about access to capital. We talk about all these different resources, people you're going to need. But at the end of the day, this idea of coming from a sense of not of abundance and not scarcity, I thought was a huge takeaway.
Yeah. And then, it was a challenge going after Pastor Moore because then I had to try to keep up with that.
You did a great job. But you were doing a great job of building on our 3 dimensions of a global positioning system to navigate crisis. And what I thought was interesting about your angle, because I thought, okay, you laid this all out yesterday. What are you going to do today? And what was interesting about it was so practical.
Yeah,
it was so practical. You didn't leave us with any uncertainty that whether it was your relationships, how you build them, whether it was, and the point that you made, which is whether it's capital. What were the 3 dimensions of
cash, hard assets, and then relational equity?
Yeah, relational equity. I thought that was a really great point because sometimes I think we definitely lean heavily on the relationship with God, but this idea that everyone you meet is essentially a new door opening and a new set of network. And we in the Nehemiah community, I was looking across all these pages and pages of pictures of people and intent. I thought, and you said, we are the network for each other. We can. And you had that great example the other day of the one entrepreneur who's now going global years before she ever thought, because you put her in contact with the other Nehemiah entrepreneurs around the world. I mean, it's really, really struck home. And then the other point that I think I took away was that our mindset, when it came to our mindset, that so much is affected by how we allow ourselves to speak and talk to ourselves, and the evil one's always lurking, and making sure that you don't give yourself an out to have a mindset that isn't focused in the right way.
He wants to set us to fight against ourselves, right? With our mouth. It's funny. So this talk, I was going one direction with my talk for this year, and then you and I had that meeting, which is we need a framework, and then literally that was our discussion. Mm-hmm. And then I said, okay, I got to shift the message to line up with this. So thank you for that.
Mm-hmm. It was neat.
And then, so after that, we had first of all, I hope you love Andy as much as I do. And no, before Andy, actually, Dr. Schlett.
Oh,
now,
yeah.
I've had a chance to interview Dr. Schlett a few times. Just great. Her book is amazing. So what do you think of the take she took on pivoting, coming from Harvard Business Review to blending scripture around that?
Well, Schlett, I think at the end of the day, my impression was that this is a woman who is she's walking a secular and spiritual world really, really well, right? Dr. Schlett Stewart, Harvard Business School, like all this really legitimate place, worked at Coca-Cola, did all these things. And she talked about the need to pivot and the need she gave both practical advice, like using a SWOT when you're at the point that you need to pivot, start with your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, and your threats, which is a great framework. But she also talked about when you're in that moment, look for wisdom, don't look for directions, right? That above directions, like, where do I go? And I think it's perfect for our GPS idea. You're sitting there like, I'm going down the road, hazard, where do I go to get around it? And her point was, step back and look for context, look for wisdom, and that will make a lot of different options play out. I thought that was terrific.
And it is a nuance that is subtle, but a difference maker. When you were sharing, I just thought the imagery of the plane rising above the fray, so you can have that outlook. The Air Force, right? That strategic positioning with the air view, it gives you a competitive advantage in battle.
Right. Exactly. And I think when we're in a crisis, and then when we're leading in a crisis, you tend to just want to quickly have an answer. And what do I do with next best answer? Where the calm that comes from, starting with the word and making sure you've got context was just really powerful. Really great. She gave you a lot of really good ideas and gave us the invitation to work with, if we have any questions, to reach out to her. She was very generous of her time, and for a person with tremendous credentials.
She is. And then we had my good friend from Australia, Andy.
No, New Zealand, not Australia.
I'm sorry, she will kill if I said that. He said, no, not us. It's like the British and what's that one next to England?
Ireland.
Ireland, that's right. Don't confuse those two. That's war.
Yeah, it's a big world. You get these, but it's true, because I visited New Zealand, and those Kiwis are very clear they are not Australians.
That's right. So, Andy, first of all, now think about my daughters. My daughters love Australian and British, Australian accents, but no, Lord Jesus, New Zealand accents. And Brother Fresher, he came very simple, but yet very profound.
Heaven in business is his message. How to bring heaven into every aspect of your business. I thought it was marvelous. And he, to build on the point that Shalette had made, you wonder, okay, so when I get these insights, how do I know they're from God? And he talked about crisis in his own business, right? And the point that I took away so powerfully was peace. When you make a decision and you feel a sense of peace, it more likely will be aligned with your God, right? It's not necessarily going to be something that keeps stirring with you and go, did I do the right thing? And I just thought, he had some really practical ideas of ways to ensure that you're bringing in the word into everything you do. And he's living it out. I mean, he's applying it into his business and his consulting and everything.
He's modeling it. And then we had our very own Tom Mears, ex-board member, and Jennifer, new board members. And they really walked us through some of the crises they face and dealing with serve with love. Now, you've been through Be Executive, you read the book and so forth. What were your thoughts there?
It's interesting because I think we always talk about mission-led companies, right? What's it like to be a mission-led company? And it sounds, in today's world, it's like the thing. It's almost like a buzzword. Oh, yes, we're mission-led, we're purpose-led. And so the question becomes, how does that show up in difficult times? Because purpose-led sounds great when it's a poster.
That's right.
It sounds great when you're giving charitable contributions. But it really is hard to truly be purpose-led when you're in the middle of a crisis. And they talked about this, whether it was the generations when his father-in-law owned the business, and he owned the business after his father-in-law. So that in itself could create different styles.
And it did.
And it did, right? They had very different styles. And then as he moved forward with the business, where they had different kinds of crisis with employees, their attitude was to serve with love. They finally figured out over time that this purpose was bigger than them. That when they ran into any decision, they went back to serving with love as, what would you do if you serve with love? That meant their benefits programs were different. That meant that they gave different delegation authority to the local restaurants to be able to serve the community. That meant when they even ran into really difficult conflict coming in from investors, that how do you deal with that? You deal with that from a point of love. And I believe you could tell, back to this peacefulness. Both Jennifer, next generation, beyond Tom, right, the daughter, they have a framework for making decisions that will leave them feeling a sense of peace and leaving something behind besides the business. So I was, I think we all learned a lot and continue. The program that they offer, the book that they offer, which you can buy on the Nehemiah website, is just a wonderful framework for being a purpose-led company.
Yeah, and they do live by example. Again, I'm talking with Susan Schramm. We both co-MC Nehemiah Week, and we are in our third day, and when we're doing a recap. Don't forget, you can still join. Tomorrow, we'll have the last day of the conference with the Investors Forum. We'll kick it off in the morning, and then the next day, we'll have an International Business Plan Competition, which, by the way, that's a free event. And then our State of the Ministry event, that also is a free event. So to register, just go to nehemiahweek.com.
And if you register, you get all the recordings from the whole time.
That's
so
right.
So even if tomorrow's your first day live, you get to have all the benefit of having the whole week.
You do. It will be virtually on demand. Samantha, go to bed. Samantha says, awesome day at Nehemiah Week. So blessed. Samantha, thank you.
Thank you for coming in from Singapore. We appreciate that, Samantha.
You mean Malaysia?
Oh, Malaysia. Oh, yeah. See, you get Ireland and England mixed up. I get Malaysia and Singapore mixed up. Okay.
There it is. Sam, thank you. Sam has been my PowerPoint maker. She's just so good at it. Thank you so much, Sam, for all your help. And poor girl, she got 2 other PowerPoints to create before Saturday. So then after Tom went to these breakouts, I led a breakout in French, Yamil led it in Spanish, and then Deborah and Frank led it in English. As we now talk, what does it mean to really walk this out, practicality? My breakout in French, we really we kind of walk them through what does it look like. Had Pastor Noella kind of share his experience in walking it out, and then we kind of had an open discussion around how would they walk it out, and the challenges and the opportunities. It was great. It was so good that they said we want to see this class in French. So we're going to host him and I'm going to co-teach the French Server Love class so we can get some trainers on it. How was it for you in the English class?
Well, it's interesting because Tom and Jennifer were in the breakout that we did. So what was fun was we had people from all over. They're English speaking, but they could be in any part of the world, Canada or the United States or anywhere else, including Kenya. And so we ended up with quite an interesting discussion because in Kenya and in the United States, many of us have actually used the content in our businesses. And there were some really great examples. One that I thought was interesting was, I didn't know this, but in Kenya, only 3% of the population in Kenya has insurance.
Mm.
And so their employers don't offer it as part of the benefits program. And so they talked about that being something that they're offering as part of the community center in Kenya, and how when that's what Tom and Jennifer were talking about was when you think about your employees, when you're at a point. Tom even mortgaged his home, and we talked about at what point do you put the business versus the other purposes that you're running the business for. They're in conflict sometimes, but if you know your purpose, you'll make decisions that aren't necessarily for profit, but they are for the bigger good, and that ends up coming back to you. You have more loyal customers, you have more loyal employees, you have more stability, and then they can serve the customers better. So I thought it was a great example of practical decisions people are making to think about this sort of purpose-led model and how it comes back to you in different ways.
Now, no wonder they grew to over $100 million a year. I mean, that makes a difference. And then Shay Bine came in, and she wrapped it up for the day. She was a powerhouse. Second year with us, and people still love her.
It's her second year, and it's interesting because Shay's message has a lot to do. She calls herself the Chief Fire Igniter, and her message has a lot to do with keeping your God in your life as you run your business, as you do things. And what she talked about this time had a lot to do with in a crisis. How do you do that? And she, in fact, I wrote down her biggest thing that I got was we had spent a lot of time even yesterday talking about, keeping context that your business isn't for you. The assets aren't for you. They aren't your assets. It's not your business. He's the chief executive officer, what she calls the chief everything officer, the CEO, the chief everything officer. But the one that really hit me was this point that she said, there's a difference between doing it for him and doing it with him, right? And she talked about all how you go through your day, sort of whenever you're in a grind. Her message was grace over grind, and the fact that grind is when you're running your business all on your own effort. And if you're out of gas, if you're exhausted, if you're tense, if you're very proud of yourself and not realizing that other purposes you're accomplishing. But at the end of the day, at each juncture during the day, at each juncture during a decision, how do you make sure you're tapping in and he's walking along with you and not feeling like, okay, Lord, I'm doing it for you, which is just a little bit of ego in a way. You're sort of like, I'm doing all the right things, right, Lord? It's just for you. No, strap in. I need you right next to me. What are we going to do about this? So I just loved how she brings it back to real life.
Truly, the idea of working with God versus for God, just a little nuance, but makes all the difference in the world. Come on to me who are laden and who are weary and heavy laden. I'll give you rest.
Right.
She mentioned this idea of operating with grace or grind, presence, mindset, and ways. Right. And that to me, and she talked about this idea of being eternally focused with an eternal ROI, enforcement of rhythm of your grace, trying to find that rhythm. So we then wrapped it up with this connect meetings, something that we love to do here in Nehemiah because we realize we are a community. It's really about connecting with others, and we gave people more time. And I went around all. So first, what do you think of the connect meetings? And
what's cracking me up about this? If you were at a real life conference, the day would end, you would have to go back to your hotel, find somebody to eat dinner or whatever. But on your way back after the meeting ends, you'd be sitting around afterwards talking to people you hadn't met before. And that's exactly how these feel. So you just randomly put into rooms with people with all different languages, and you find out that some people had like taken Spanish in high school or French in high school, and they were trying out and their English wasn't so great. But what was amazing was the sense of community that we came away with, and this feeling as if you were just like hanging out with friends. So everybody there was saying, oh, let's talk about that. We should meet on that. It's just so real. So it's what makes that community, that sense that you're actually in a place with other people from around the world, is what makes Nehemiah Week just so exceptionally unique.
Well said. As I went around the various room, what I realized was this is the middle of the conference. We're about halfway. The walls have come down, and people are really engaging. They're curious about each other. And what's going to happen tomorrow is that now they're family.
Yeah, right.
Some
of those people are guys going to start businesses together, I swear.
That's right. That's really right. Incredible. Well, Susan, as we wrap up here, so this is our last podcast. As you think about last year versus this year, what is kind of your thing? What do you think made the difference this year for us and you as MC?
Well, it's not unlike being on a bicycle. As you said at one point, we're back on the bicycle and we know how to ride. And I think the world has embraced virtual way more than we might have thought. I truly don't think, even as I know you're holding a live event. When is your live event in Tampa?
January, Tampa.
January in Tampa, you're going to have a live event, which is great. But I think that the virtual model is powerful. And the fact is, we can't let this go. The fact that people can come, it takes away the objections to saying, I'd love to go, but, right? And as a result, if our goal is to really equip entrepreneurs, give them a sense of inspiration and community. I had one guy in one of those Connect meetings say, he says, I 2 weeks ago, I didn't even know what this was. And here I am, and I'm going to every single session. And I said, well, what do you think makes it so compelling? And he said, well, I think it's not only that it's professionally run, because it's so that we don't miss a minute. I mean, every second we've got this moving along. And also the speakers are very good, but the topics are very timely. And he said, I don't think I would have necessarily gone to it if you told me 2 weeks ago, oh, do you want to fly somewhere? But I can be here. And it's so timely, and I needed this right now. And I just feel like that's the one thing that we will continue to do as Nehemiah, that we can bring this community together with reducing the friction and allowing people to step into community in such a way that they really feel like they've been fed and equipped and connected.
Wow. Let's stop it there. Susan, you don't only MC this year, but you were a sponsor. We really appreciate it. Thank you. You serve us on the board with your time, your talents, and your treasure. See you in 2022.
I'll see you. Well, I don't know. You might sign up with somebody else next year, but I really enjoyed being part of this. Thank you so much.
You're stuck with us.
Full-time gig?
Because
am I signed up for a full-time gig? Oh, that's right. I'm working with Patrice, the master persuader.
Because you bring both content and perspective. And it's different. You bring a great balance. And interesting, you and I have the same gift profile. You and ID, right?
No, C.
Right. Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah,
we have, no wonder. Okay, yeah. You have that I together, that C and D. Now I see where that C and D.
Well, I will say that our personalities definitely complement each other, but we both talk too fast for the translators. When you're translating into French and Spanish real time, which is amazing.
Yeah.
I keep thinking we both got to slow it down a little bit.
Slow down. We chasing the time, like our speakers are saying.
Good luck tomorrow with the Investor Forum. I think I'm going to be watching. It's going to be great.
Well, guys, if you don't know about Susan Schramm, go to Market Impact. She has a consulting business where she can help you de-risk your next strategy. She can help you de-risk your current strategy. She can help you de-risk if you're thinking about growing to a new market, if you're thinking about addressing you're stuck right now. You're thinking about how to articulate to your stakeholders about a process by which they can feel safe about what you're doing or what you're planning on doing. Go to Market Impact, and she can help you with that, either as a speaker, a consultant, or a coach. Either way, and she has some on-demand programs coming up that also be making cost effective. But before we close, is there a date for your on-demand program yet?
I will say that it will be a 2022 available. I'm piloting right now. I'm getting all sorts of fascinating feedback from mixing online with live. Excuse me. That's exactly what you're doing. I'm at the feet of people and what they're doing.
Right.
Yeah. Thanks and I really would love to work with this community. It'd be great.
Yeah, I can't wait for that, because you're trying to bring some offerings that are cost effective, that allow for people to access you in different ways, including, did I hear a book? Including
the book's on its way. I work with CEOs and boards who have decided they're going to shift, and they have this big idea, but they haven't necessarily brought everyone along with them. And that point, whether it's your investors or your employees or your customers, if you're making a shift, it's scary. And I identify the risk. Interestingly enough, no one planned for a pandemic risk. But what we're learning is being good about talking about risk up front is important. And I think you created this wonderful, timely discussion of thriving in a chaos, which I think the content of which will be great forever.
Yes.
The content from this program will be very, very useful.
Wow. Thank you, Susan.
See you tomorrow morning.
Yes. Go to Market Impact, guys, and get to know Susan a lot more. So listen. Join us tomorrow. Go now and register. Go to NehemiahWeek.com. NehemiahWeek.com. Go there and register. Join us tomorrow. We're going to kick it off with a prayer and then a devotion on Pastor Gabriel from Paris, France. And then we're going to go into a wonderful panel discussion. We've brought in a CFO. We've brought in Chuck Prophet from Cincinnati, and we've brought in John from Kenya. We're going to talk about an entrepreneur, a community leader, and a CFO. What advice can they give us as we navigate through crisis? And then we're gonna go into we have Mick Owens from Indianapolis. He's gonna talk about his own journey as he dealt with crisis, and that will tee up our investors forum. 3 entrepreneurs who are raising capital, 1 who actually has already raised capital, fully funded, 2 who are raising new capital. And you're going to learn about how investors deal with it. Will they raise new capital tomorrow? Will they convince investors to give them more money? We'll see. Join us tomorrow. Go to NehemiahWeek.com. NehemiahWeek.com. With that said, if you want to know more about the Nehemiah Project, go to NehemiahProject.org or NehemiahEcommunity.org. Learn about a training program, a coaching program, access to capital. Become a member, because membership does have its benefits. Thank you so much, guys. Let me pray for you. May the Lord bless you. May the Lord enable you to steward those talents that are under your care. And may the Lord enable you to steward them in such a way that one day you'll hear those wonderful words. Well done. Good and faithful servant. You've been faithful over a few things. Guess what? He'll not make you rule over much. God bless you. Thank you, Susan.
Bye.
Welcome to our 18th annual conference, our virtual global event of the year, Nehemiah Week 2020.